Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a city with no walls, no fields, no solid ground beneath its feet. A city built not on land, but on water. No king ever planned it, no empire designed it, and yet, for centuries, it became one of the most powerful cities on Earth. Tonight, we travel to a place that should never have existed: Venice.
Venice was not born from ambition. It was born from fear. Long before palaces and canals, before merchants and masked festivals, there were only refugees, families fleeing war, villages escaping invasion, people who had nowhere left to go, so they went where no one else would. Into the swamps, into the salt water, into the shallow lagoons of the Adriatic Sea. This was not a place meant for life. The ground shifted. The air was heavy. Disease lingered in the water. But the invaders did not follow. And so, what began as a hiding place slowly became a home.
Venice did not rise in fire. It rose in silence. Wooden coals were driven deep into the mud. Not dozens, not hundreds, millions. Upon them, stone was laid. Churches were raised. Markets appeared. And against all logic, the city held. Every day, the water reminded Venice that it did not belong. Every night, the city refused to sink.
What makes Venice extraordinary is not its beauty, it is its choice. Other cities sought land. Venice chose water. Other powers sought armies. Venice chose ships. Other rulers sought crowns. Venice chose councils. From the beginning, Venice did not dream of conquest. It dreamed of survival. And survival would slowly become power. For centuries, the world would look at Venice and ask the same question: how is this city still standing? No walls, no empire, no king. Just balance, just patience, just time. Venice became rich not by taking land, but by moving goods. Spices from the East, silk from Asia, gold from Africa. Everything passed through water, and Venice controlled the water, not with force, but with trust. Merchants trusted Venice, kings trusted Venice, enemies negotiated with Venice, because Venice did not rush, it waited. And yet, even cities built on patience cannot escape time. The same waters that protected Venice would one day isolate it. The same stability that preserved Venice would one day slow it. But we are not there yet. For now, Venice is rising, quietly, carefully, like a city listening to the tide. Before we continue this journey, if you enjoy calm stories like this, stories meant not just to teach, but to be experienced, you're invited to like this video and subscribe to Stories That Shaped the World. New journeys are waiting. In the next chapter, we will watch Venice grow, not into an empire, but into something rarer, a city that ruled without conquering, and for a while, the world followed its rhythm. There is a strange thing about Venice. It never tried to become powerful. It simply tried to remain afloat. And yet, over time, the world bent its trade routes, its wealth, and its attention toward this city of water. Not because Venice demanded it, but because Venice was reliable.
Venice understood something very early. Land is fixed. Water is not. Armies march slowly. Ships move with the wind. While other cities built walls, Venice built docks. While others counted fields, Venice counted tides. The sea was not a border. It was a road, and Venice became its gatekeeper. The Adriatic Sea was calm enough to sail, but dangerous enough to discourage rivals. Venice learned its rhythms, the currents, the storms, the seasons. Generations of sailors passed down knowledge not written in books, but etched into memory. By the time other cities realized the importance of maritime trade, Venice was already waiting for them. Venice did not conquer lands, it connected them. Spices from India, silk from China, gold from Africa, grain from Eastern Europe. These goods did not belong to Venice, they passed through it, and that made all the difference. Venice did not grow rich by owning resources, it grew rich by moving them. Every merchant who docked in Venice found something rare: order. Contracts were honored, ports were regulated, disputes were settled. In a world where trust was scarce, Venice sold certainty. Merchants talked, and trade followed trust. Soon, Venice was no longer just a city on the water. It was the heart of Mediterranean commerce. Venice feared one thing above all: a single ruler. Kings fell, dynasties ended, empires collapsed. Venice wanted none of that. So it built a system that moved slowly, deliberately. The Doge was elected, but never allowed to rule alone. Councils watched councils. Power checked power. Decisions took time, but they endured. This was not democracy as we know it. It was balance. Venice understood that stability was more valuable than brilliance. Venice did not field massive armies. It built fleets, merchant ships that could fight, warships that could trade. Every vessel was an investment. Every sailor was trained to defend cargo as fiercely as territory. The Venetian arsenal became the most advanced shipyard in the world. Ships were built in days, not months. Standardized parts, efficient labor, relentless organization. Centuries before the industrial age, Venice mastered production, quietly. Venice did not seek borders. It sought harbors. Crete, Cyprus, Dalmatian coastlines. Strategic islands and ports were enough. Venice did not rule people deeply inland. It ruled the sea lanes, and that gave it leverage without overreach. Other empires expanded until they collapsed under their own weight. Venice stopped before it was forced to. Venice was never in a hurry. It watched rivals fight and sold supplies to both. It waited while others exhausted themselves, and when the moment was right, Venice moved, slowly, carefully, profitably. This patience became its greatest strength. But time does not stand still. The sea routes that once favored Venice would eventually change. New paths would be discovered, new oceans crossed, and the same patience that once protected Venice would soon become hesitation. But that story belongs to another chapter. If this journey through Venice feels calming, if these slow stories help you unwind and reflect, you're always welcome to like this video and subscribe to Stories That Shaped the World. There are many more journeys ahead. Venice had risen, not as an empire of fire and steel, but as an empire of balance and water. For centuries, it mastered the art of staying still while the world rushed past. But eventually, the world would take a new route,
and Venice would face a choice it could not avoid.
Venice had something most powers never achieved. It ruled without looking like it ruled. No vast inland borders, no conquering armies marching through fields. Just ships, just ledgers, just agreements written in ink. And somehow, the ink became stronger than steel. In the medieval world, risk was everywhere. A ship could disappear, a contract could be broken, a ruler could change his mind overnight. But Venice built a reputation for something priceless: predictability. If you signed a deal in Venice, it mattered. If you stored goods in Venetian warehouses, they were protected. If you traveled under Venetian flags, you were safer than most. This is how Venice began to rule, not by taking, but by guaranteeing. It sold certainty to a world addicted to fear. Venice's greatest weapon was not the sword, it was the rule book. Venice built maritime law the way other kingdoms built castles. Contracts became sacred, insurance appeared, credit became normal. Merchants could borrow money to fund voyages. Investors could share risk without ever leaving the city. This created a quiet miracle. Venice made long-distance trade less dangerous, and when trade became less dangerous, trade became larger. And when trade became larger, Venice became richer. Not with one dramatic conquest, but with thousands of small decisions that stacked like stones. Most rulers in history think in lifetimes. Venice thought in centuries. It built institutions that survived individual ambition. Even when leaders changed, the system remained. Committees argued, councils voted, secrets were kept. Venice was slow by design. Slow enough to avoid panic. Slow enough to outlast emotions. In a world driven by impulse, Venice chose endurance, and endurance became power. Venice did not only trade goods, it traded knowledge. Who was at war? Who was in debt? Which port was unsafe? Which king was ill? Venice built networks of informants like threads in a web. Not always noble, not always kind, but effective. If you know what is coming, you do not need to fight it. You can step aside, you can profit, you can prepare. Venice learned to survive by seeing the storm before the sky turned dark. Venice rarely tried to crush enemies outright. It negotiated. It balanced powers against each other the way sailors balance weight on a ship. Sometimes it supported one kingdom, sometimes another. Not out of loyalty, but out of stability. Venice preferred a world where no single power could swallow the sea, because if one power ruled everything, Venice would become irrelevant. So Venice kept the world divided just enough, not to create chaos, but to prevent domination. This was power without an empire.
Venice did have possessions, but it chose them carefully. Not huge territories inland, hard to govern, hard to defend. Instead, islands, harbors, coastlines, places where ships could dock, where supplies could be stored, where routes could be secured. Each port was not just land, it was a knot in a network. and Venice's real empire was the network itself. If you control the knots, you control the flow.
Venice's wealth did not feel like gold. It felt like security. The streets were guarded, the warehouses regulated, the markets organized. For a merchant, Venice was peace, and peace attracts people. Bankers, shipbuilders, navigators, artisans. The city became a machine built to move the world's goods. And when a city becomes a machine, its strength is not obvious, but it is immense.
But every strength hides a vulnerability. Venice's power depended on flow. Ships arriving, goods moving, routes staying the same. If the flow changed, Venice would feel it first, and later it would feel it the hardest. At the height of its calm success, Venice did not hear the future approaching, not because it was blind, but because it had become comfortable.
If you're enjoying this slow journey through history, stories meant to be felt, not rushed, you're welcome to like the video and subscribe to Stories That Shaped the World. More voyages are waiting. Venice had become powerful without conquering land. It ruled trade routes. It ruled contracts. It ruled trust. But then the world discovered something larger than the Mediterranean, the ocean. And oceans do not belong to any one city.
Venice did not fall in a single night. No invasion breached its gates. No army burned its palaces. Instead, the world simply began to move around it.
For centuries, Venice stood at the center of trade. If goods moved between east and west, they passed through Venetian waters. But the world was changing, quietly at first. Ships grew stronger, navigation improved, maps expanded, and suddenly the Mediterranean was no longer enough. Merchants began to look west, beyond familiar coastlines, beyond known seas. They dreamed of new routes, shorter paths, greater profits. Venice watched and waited. It had always waited. Then came a shift no council could stop. The Atlantic opened. Portuguese ships rounded Africa. Spanish sails crossed unknown waters. Trade no longer needed Venice. Spices bypassed the Mediterranean. Gold flowed directly to Atlantic ports. The sea Venice knew was no longer the center of the world, and for the first time, Venice was not at the crossroads.
Venice responded the only way it knew how. Slowly, cautiously. Its government debated. Committees formed. Reports were written. But speed mattered now, and Venice was built for patience. What once made Venice stable now made it heavy. Decisions that had protected it now delayed it. The city had mastered balance, but the world demanded motion.
Venice believed in continuity. It trusted systems that had worked for centuries. Why change what had never failed? But history does not reward perfection. It rewards adaptation. Venice did not decline because it lacked intelligence. It declined because it trusted the past too much.
Other powers reacted differently. Spain expanded outward. Portugal explored relentlessly. England invested in oceans. Venice remained inward. It defended what it had. It maintained its ports.
It protected its routes, but it did not chase the future. And the future did not wait. There was no single moment when Venice knew it had been left behind. Only a slow accumulation of signs. Fewer ships, smaller profits, quieter docks. The canals still flowed, the palaces still stood, but something intangible was missing: momentum. Venice had always understood water. Tides rise, tides fall. But this tide did not return. The routes that bypassed Venice became permanent. The city remained beautiful, orderly, calm. But calm, for the first time, felt like stillness. Venice did not resist change with violence. It accepted it with dignity, and that acceptance became its defining moment. The city chose not to chase empires, not to gamble stability for dominance. Instead, it learned how to endure decline without chaos. But endurance has a cost. If these quiet turning points resonate with you, if you find comfort in histories that unfold slowly, you're welcome to like this video and subscribe to Stories That Shaped the World. More journeys are waiting just beyond the horizon.
Venice had reached its moment. Not a collapse, not a defeat. A choice. Remain what it had always been, or become something else. Venice chose continuity, and in doing so, it stepped gently out of the center of history.
There is a comforting idea that stability is always good, that what lasts the longest must also be the wisest. Venice invites us to question that belief. For centuries, Venice was the most stable place in an unstable world. While kings fell, Venice endured. While empires expanded and shattered, Venice remained. Its laws changed slowly, its institutions carefully, its leaders cautiously. This was not weakness, it was intention. Venice believed that survival came from restraint.
Venice never sought a single brilliant leader. It feared charisma. Charisma inspired loyalty, but also chaos. Instead, Venice trusted systems, councils, committees, rules layered upon rules. No one ruled alone. No one moved quickly. This balance prevented sudden collapse, but it also prevented sudden renewal. Venice avoided extremes. It did not gamble recklessly. It did not chase glory. But history rewards those willing to risk transformation. When the world shifted, Venice evaluated, and evaluated again. Others acted. Venice calculated. And by the time the calculation ended, the moment had passed. Venice did not fail like other powers. It did not burn. It did not implode. It became irrelevant. And irrelevance is a quieter ending. No heroes, no villains. Just a slow drift away from the center. Venice teaches us that systems can protect us, but they can also bind us. That patience can preserve peace, but it can also delay progress. That balance is powerful until the world demands movement. We still face Venice's question today. How much change is too much? How much stability is enough? When do we preserve, and when do we adapt? Venice offers no answers,
only a mirror. Venice did not regret its choice. It remained beautiful, orderly, enduring, and perhaps that was enough. But history is not only about survival, it is also about relevance. And Venice accepted the cost of choosing one over the other.
If these reflections speak to you, if you enjoy stories that invite calm thought rather than noise, you're welcome to like this video and subscribe to Stories That Shaped the World. There are many more quiet lessons ahead. Venice paid the price of stability, not in blood, not in fire, but in silence. And sometimes, silence is the most expensive cost of all.
There is a moment in every journey when the traveler slows down, not because the road ends, but because the destination no longer needs to be reached. Venice reached that moment long ago. Venice is still here. Its streets still echo with footsteps. Its canals still carry light. The city did not vanish when its power faded. It remained, not as a ruler of trade routes, but as a keeper of memory.
As its influence waned, Venice turned inward. Art flourished. Music softened the silence. Architecture became a conversation with time. If Venice could no longer shape the world, it would reflect it, and in doing so, it found another kind of permanence.
Water had given Venice life, and water would take it slowly, not violently, not cruelly, just steadily. Every tide whispered the same truth. Nothing lasts forever, but some things last long enough to matter. Most histories end with noise, battles, declarations, collapses. Venice ended with acceptance, and that is why its story feels different. It does not demand admiration, it invites reflection. As this journey ends, we carry Venice with us, not as a lesson carved in stone, but as a question held gently. When the world changes, what do we choose to preserve? And what are we willing to let go? Very slow, gentle, peaceful. If this journey brought you calm, if these quiet stories help you rest and reflect, you're always welcome to like this video and subscribe to Stories That Shaped the World. There are many more journeys waiting, slow, thoughtful, and human. Venice did not fight time. It listened. And in listening, it taught us something rare. That not all endings need to be loud. Some are meant to fade gently, like footsteps on water, disappearing, but never forgotten.